It is St. Louis. That's President Trump at 7:51. Stephen Roberts, the best in the business, ABC News political analyst. Good morning, Stephen.
Hey, pal.
So Rex Tillerson is saying one thing. The UN Ambassador Alex Haley's Ambassador Haley saying something else, and Donald Trump's saying something else when it comes to regime change and our policy on Syria. Is that a brilliant strategy, or are they not on the same page?
Well, I think it's a result of the fact that this is a new administration, a president who has virtually no experience in foreign policy. And you mentioned Rex Tillerson, Nikki Haley. Neither of them have any experience either. Rex Tillerson was a business executive. Nikki Haley was governor of South Carolina. And what you're seeing is people trying to evolve a strategy that goes beyond emotions and goes beyond impulse. I mean, Trump, in fact, got a fair amount of praise for the fact that in the wake of the gas attack in Syria, he sees these horrific images on TV and he orders this missile attack, and people say, gee, he's sending a message. Well, what is the message, though? Is the message that we're going to try to change the Assad government in Damascus, as Haley implied? Is the message that we're going to retaliate every time Assad uses chemical weapons? Is the message that we're going to increase American military presence in Syria, something that Trump, as a candidate, repeatedly warned against? And if we do that, are we prepared to confront the Russians, who have major military installations scattered all through Syria? So, yeah, sending a message by lobbing a couple of missiles is easy. But what's the second and third and fourth step down the line? What's the strategic goal? That's very unclear.
Seems like there's lots of people are all over the board, as you mentioned, but because, let's face it, there is no answer to this hornet's nest known as Syria.
I agree with you. There is no easy answer. There's not even a complex answer. I mean, the fact is that Syria it'd be one thing if you could say, okay, here's the government and here are the rebels, and we're going to arm the rebels and we're going to the freedom fighters. But that's not the situation. There are half a dozen different groups, including ISIS, that occupy some territory in Syria. As I mentioned, the Russians have all sorts of military installations in that country. And even when Nikki Haley says, well, our ultimate goal is regime change, and a lot of people say, gee, that's a good idea, because Assad clearly is a crazed dictator, a bloodthirsty, savage character who has caused the deaths of countless thousands of his own people. Absolutely true. But we learned in Libya, we learned in Iraq, that to some extent even in Egypt, when you depose a strongman, a dictator, what could ensue is chaos, because these are countries with no political infrastructure, no tradition of democratic rule, no mechanism for reconciling the ethnic and tribal and religious rivalries in these countries. And so it's easy to say, get rid of Assad, very hard to say what comes next after Assad. So, the bottom line is there is no easy answer. It was very easy to criticize Barack Obama for being cautious and timid when it came to Syria. Trump did that. But now that he's president, he's realizing that the realities on the ground have not changed.
Steve Bannon has kicked off the NSA Council, and it seems like President Trump changed from America first to some internationalist philosophy. Is there a correlation, or are people reading too much into this?
Well, I think it's too much to say that Trump has changed philosophy, because I don't think Trump has a philosophy. I mean, there's no sense that Trump has a coherent worldview, a coherent set of strategic goals. He campaigned as a nationalist, but that was rhetoric, McGraw. That was campaign sloganeering. That wasn't a thought-out strategy. As I say, he's now encountering a much more complex and difficult world than it looked like on the campaign trail. But Steve Bannon is someone who, again, has never been in government, and he is a rigid ideologue. And I think one of the things that Trump has already learned is that you can't approach the world from that kind of rigidity, that kind of intense ideology. It's too complicated, and there are too many pragmatic decisions you have to make. It's clear that his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, has clashed repeatedly with Bannon. If there is, it's a pretty good rule in a fight that if one of the participants has family ties to the ruler and the other doesn't, family is going to win out. And I think Bannon, he hasn't been banished yet, but he clearly has lost some of his influence with Trump, in part because as Trump learns more about the world and learns more about the office, it looks a whole lot more complicated than Steve Bannon's worldview, and in fact, the worldview that Trump had as a candidate.
I got about 45 seconds here. I find it interesting, though, the people who supported Trump the most were most critical of his airstrikes in Syria.
Well, that's because Trump campaigned against these kinds of military operations. There is a whole theory that when you talk about America first, one version of that, it's open to a lot of interpretations, McGraw, but one version of America first is the traditional one, which is America withdraws. America is Fortress America. America does not get entangled in these foreign adventures and these foreign, extremely complex foreign problems. And so, there are a group of people who say, wait, Donald Trump campaigned on America first. That meant America withdrawing, America isolating itself, America ending some of its entanglements around the world. But then when you start lobbing cruise missiles at an air base in Syria, suddenly the world looks different.
Stephen Roberts, ABC News political analyst. Thanks for checking in.
Okay, pal.
7:58 KTRS.
Is your